What's up, guys? So today on the podcast, we're going to be talking to Todd Fox, who is an interesting fella. He's got, obviously, he's a Jiu-Jitsu guy. That's most of the people that we bring on are related to Jiu-Jitsu. Every now and then we don't, but most of the time. Black belt in Jiu-Jitsu. You know, he started training way back in the day, as he'll talk about. He's also involved in the protection business, and both for civilians and for people that are like celebrities and stuff. I was trying to think about how to word that, right? Celebrities and stuff like that. So interesting guy and has a lot of cool stuff and has been around the jiu-jitsu and the martial arts community for a long time. So again, it was a really fun podcast. I hope you guys enjoy it. As always, thanks to our sponsors, Charlotte's Web. So Charlotte's Web, obviously, you guys know, creates, some, in my opinion, some of the best CBD around. Again, I'm a big fan of their product because of the fact that it's third-party tested. You know what's in the bottle. So if I'm taking a supplement, for me, I like to know exactly what I'm taking. I measure my coffee. I weigh my food. I want to know if I put a particular type of supplement in me, I know exactly the milligrams or whatever I'm getting. So this way, if I find a dosage that works for me, I know what I'm getting. And, you know, there was a study that was done where like 70% of the CBD that's out there is not measured correctly. It's not dosed correctly. What's on the label is not what's actually in there. They could have less of stuff or more of stuff that you don't want. And so, again, they've got a great product. I'm always giving my students, I feel like I'm a CBD dealer. I'm like giving them like samples and stuff like that.
You want some gummies?
You want some gummies? You want something that's going to help you relax? You want something that's going to help you deal with what are we supposed to do? A general sense of well-being.
Do you want to feel good?
You want to feel good? Then take this. But no, it's funny because I'll let them try it, and then they always end up, hey, which one did you give me? Because I'm going to go buy some now. Which is a cool thing because I'm glad they're not like, yeah, that thing sucked. Like, I didn't get anything from that. But again, I always encourage people to try it because, you know, for a long time, I remember hearing about Charlotte's Web originally on Joe Rogan's podcast a long time ago. I remember hearing about it. And it's like, Charlotte's Web CBD oil. I'm like, it doesn't sound like it's going to do anything. I was like, oil? You know, because, I mean, again, if you take like a multivitamin, most of the time you don't notice any difference or anything like that. You know, so I'm like, okay, just another thing, you know, that you'll pee out, or that's not going to make that big of a difference. But then I tried CBD. Originally, it started off, I got a rub put on my back, and it was amazing. I was like, oh my God, like the pain went away. Like I was able to, like, I felt great. I was like, huh. Well, maybe there's something to the CBD stuff. And I started using CBD oils, and I liked it. The only problem was there was such a wide variety of differences from company to company. Like I used one that was local, and man, I felt like I was high. I was like, they probably got a little too much THC in this one. Because I was like, I would take the dosage and I would be walking around, and I had the...
foggy.
Yeah, well, I had the same feeling that I would eat if like I had like some of my buddies up in Seattle give me like THC mints. And I'll take those, like it's like THC and CBD mints, and they're great for relaxing. But like you take them and you eat them, and it's like, I mean, you're just kind of like chill. You're like way chill. I felt the same way from the CBD. I'm like, this is a little different. But then I started taking the other stuff, and it was the same thing as far as helping relax, but I didn't feel like I was high, I guess you'd say. And again, I like Charlotte's Web because of the fact that it's consistent with that. So anyway, if you guys want to check it out for yourselves, you can go to their website and you go to charlottesweb.com. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu. You'll save 15% on the order. I encourage people to try it for a month, see what you think. You can grab one of the tinctures, one of the gummy packs or whatever, and just see what you think for a month. And after that, you can make a good decision whether or not it was useful to you. Just like I did about, I guess it's been about 3 years now is when I started taking CBD. And big thanks to our sponsor, Matt at Epic Roll. EpicRollBJJ.com is the website. What do they got going on? He's always cooking up something new.
So we had asked him for some shorter shorts to show off our legs, and he's coming out with some shorter shorts. I don't know if they're there out yet, but they will be coming soon. And then he's got some
you shall receive.
Yeah, and then some tie-dye rash guards.
Okay, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of my short shorts. I like my my Softy shorts.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how my neighbors are gonna like take to me, like walking around like in the backyard at the farm, like with my like Ranger panties on. You know.
That'll be fine.
Yeah.
Look at those legs.
Well, I mean, like back when I was like living at my other place in the neighborhood, I used to like get out and like do my like qigong meditation and stuff like that, like do my Tai Chi stuff, my movements out my Ranger panties, and you know, you just know that people are looking at you going, "What is that big?" It
doesn't make
doing?
sense. He has big bearded fella, just these tiny shorts, like,
just moving, just
like doing this flowy, rhythmic breathing. You're just an anomaly. You're like a glitch in the Matrix.
I'm just a big strange man.
That's another way to put it.
I'm a big strange man. But again, I'm a big fan of Matt's stuff. Again, anything that's on as a sponsor, I'm a big fan of the products. Otherwise, they're not going to make it on. Recently, you guys have probably heard about it because I'm talking about it. I'm a big fan of his no Velcro shorts.
Yes, they're awesome.
They're comfortable. They're loose and fitting. I typically wear spats under my shorts just because I like having that warmth around my knees, and it also helps with like mat burns and stuff.
Yeah.
I went like without spats recently, and like my skin has lost, like my knee skin has lost because my toes, for instance, I can scrape my toes against the mat, nothing, but my knees have gotten used to having spats on.
They're sensitive.
Yeah, they got a good mat burn on it. But and again, I love the feel of them. They're super loose. Like it's like when you it's like your body when your eyes work perfectly, you forget that they're there. Right, you don't notice your eyes unless like you get up and you see floaties or you're having trouble seeing stuff. If you're wearing clothing, you don't really notice you're wearing it unless it's restrictive. Right, like if you notice like a belt's pulled too tight or a shirt's kind of something, then you notice it. And again, I don't want to be noticing my clothing when I'm training. I don't want to be wearing something that's uncomfortable or inflexible or anything like that. And I really like those shorts. But again, he's got a ton of other cool stuff on his website. Everything from really cool like shirts and shorts and gis and everything else. And again, I'm a big fan of his shirts. I like the designs because they're clean and simple, opposed to like a bunch of crap on it. Like I know it sounds like I'm the guy that like I like to find something with like a little logo. Like if I get like a name brand shirt at like a store, I get the thing with a little logo, and I don't want the big plastered on. And likewise, like I like having little things where, we talked about this where back in the day you'd have like tap out, right? And back in the day nobody knew what tap out was, and it was like you were in this in thing, And so I like having those kinds of things where it's like Kimura lock. Like I wore that shirt the other day and someone's looking at me like, what is, like they're cocking their head and so like, what does that mean? Like Kimura lock, You can just see them like kind of doing it. I'm like,
You want to get the little head tilt. Like, like a dog's like looking at you.
What is that? So again, if you want to check out any of his stuff, you can go to his website at epicrollbjj.com. Promo code is Chewjitsu. Save 15% on the order. And also, speaking of gear, I've got a little something special going on right now. So Origin Contact, I talked to a rep back in 2018, and she reached out to me. She's like, hey, would you be interested in doing a partnership with Origin to do a gi? And I was like, I don't know, because, they're kind of expensive, and I'd never really worn one of their gis. I'd seen them in action. They look like cool gis, but I'd never really gotten into them. So she gave me one. She's like, take this gi. She's like, try it. If you like it, great. If you don't, whatever. And I tried the damn thing on, and it's a great gi. A lot of times you don't know until you have contrast to something. And I wore it just like the CBD stuff, right? Like I didn't know until I had contrast. Oh, this is how I feel with it, and this is how I feel without it. Oh, I like this. It's like when people change their diets, right? Like, oh man, I changed my diet. God, I feel amazing drinking water and eating clean food and like getting more sleep. I feel amazing. Maybe I should do this more. And I put the darn gi on it, and man, the best fitting pants I've ever had in jiu-jitsu. Because again, I'm in a weird situation where like if I wear an A3 pants, a lot of times they're kind of long on my ankles. They hit a little bit long. But if I wear A2, they're too tight around my quads and my butt. So you're kind of in between. And again, because most of the time jiu-jitsu pants are like you're wearing a burlap sack with string. These are, I mean, it is what it is, right? You're trying to fit as many people into that bag as you can. These are, again, they're done by the waist and the inseam, so it's super nice, sort of custom fit to you. And then the gi is really nice. One of the neat things about it is the gi has like, it's almost porous. Like it's a pearl weave gi, so it's a basic single weave that you have, but it has these almost little spots, like holes at that size. And so the gi dries really quick, and you're constantly like has airflow going the whole time, so you stay kind of cool in it. It's a really neat gi. So like I thought it was like, I thought like when you pay for it, it was expensive just because it's being made by American citizens who getting a living wage, which it's a cool thing I'm down with. Right? I'm all about that. But at the same time, I was like, am I buying anything that's unique? And I tried. I was like, oh, I get it. This is why it costs this much. It's different. It's not the same thing that I can get overseas, because a lot of times you can get any gi you want to made overseas, right? Just slap a different logo on, boom, there you go. This one's very unique, and so I was excited about the partnership. And so if you guys want to check it out, I've got a gi. I've been working. I wore the first Origin gi that I had for 3 years. beat the crap out of that sucker, put it through the worst cycles in the wash, the hardest drying cycles. I mean, just try to like, let me break the thing. There's 3 years later, there's not a thread out of place. There's not a shred. There's not a tear. It's fine. And then I got the Jiu-Jitsu one made about 6-7 months ago. Been trying it out. It's a great gi. I love it. Everybody's been messaging me about it, and so now we have it. So we have a black and green one. It's a black gi with a green lapel. Looks pretty sweet. And then we've got a white one. And the white one is just plain classic white, and that's for people that are in those gyms that are more traditional, that don't allow colors. And so you can wear those. And again, it's a really cool gi if you want to check it out. If you want to, just go to you can go to my Instagram, my Facebook, or even my jiu-jitsu.net, or any of those places, and there will be a link somewhere on my shop.
We'll put a link in the comments or in the description of the podcast.
So wherever you follow me at, there's going to be something out there for you, because I'm trying to get it out there so this way as many people can get there, because we're doing a pre-sale with them, so it's going to be from May 7th to May 21st. After that, no mas. And again, I don't like to constantly deal with that sort of volume of products. So we're doing a pre-sale on it, so you can get a customized gi. You can check it out. So do that. And then if you guys want to support the podcast, you can also check out our Patreon at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And guys, with all that said, let's jump into the podcast with Todd.
Yeah, it was cool. I looked through your book, by the way. We'll get into it later. It's interesting. You know, it's kind of like Chewy had, we talk about going into like a restaurant or something, right? Going into a restaurant, and like you always talk about like having your back kind of against the wall where you can see the entrance and everything.
Yeah, I'm neurotic.
And that's some of the stuff you talk about in your book too, about kind of being aware of your surroundings. And so we'll get into that. And that's I don't think it's a neurotic per se.
Well,
listen, in my world, it's not neurotic. You may be neurotic, but what you're doing is also rational and reasonable.
Well, see, what happened with me is when I was a kid, I got jumped, right? So like I lived in a bad neighborhood, got the crap beat out of me. And then since then, I've got over the nervousness of like walking outside, but I've noticed that even since then, when I walk into a room, I instantly scan everything around. And like, it's funny because I'll go into places and we're in Louisville. Louisville's not a massive city, and we have a large gym. And so I have a lot of students that I'll see at different places, and I'll always find people that I know before they ever find me, just because I'm always scanning everywhere I go, because it's one of those things that kind of stays with you. So I'm always you just never know what's going on.
There's a word for that. It's called survival. Yeah. So what you're doing ensures your survival, and you learn that through being attacked. And that's exactly why we do that in the protective field. And this is the thing, it's so much like jiu-jitsu, because you get caught with things that you didn't know existed. Like, oh, I'm in no danger here whatsoever. I'm good. And then fuck, I didn't know what that was. What did he just do to me? Right. And you get hit with some new move or some weird angle or something. So it's the exact same. So you limiting the options that somebody else has to attack you is absolutely normal and cool and good, and it's a great thing.
You can also avoid people if there's somebody you don't want to talk to. You just kind of
yes. There you go. Well, when you see them first, GTFO. I'm out of here.
So, man, how did you get into all this kind of stuff?
Protection.
Yeah.
I was in the Marine Corps. So I was in the Marine Corps, and while I was in the Marine Corps, I started doing protective work down in Mexico.
When did you go into the Marines? How old were you?
I signed up at 17. I went in at 18, and it was straight away kind of a very different world, right? And it was super cool, because I don't know about you guys, I like shooting, I like fighting, I like traveling, I like girls, and so that was kind of my motivation. And I knew at the time I was smart enough. The one thing I was smart enough to know was that if I went straight to college, that was it. It would be drinking and girls, and there's zero chance of me studying. So that was kind of my coping mechanism, right? Like, okay, go to the Marines. And it worked out well for me, man, because I got to do a lot of really cool stuff.
What was is that kind of the main motivation? Was it just kind of trying to set your life in some type of motion and not get caught up in like kind of partying?
I wasn't, I don't know how you guys operate, but for me, like, I need to understand how the thing I'm learning correlates to my life. And in a classical setting in high school, it didn't apply to the things that I cared about. And to this day, even with, an undergraduate degree and a graduate degree in business, I still only learn when I can apply it. And so when I went to college, then I started to see some bits and pieces that correlated better. And then in graduate school, when I focused on business, that was perfect because we were dealing specifically with whatever the core competency is, in that case, business. And it made sense to me. And so I excelled. So I went from not really caring too much to really caring, and then applying what they were teaching. Like in jiu-jitsu, if you're learning something that doesn't fit into your game at all, it's great to learn how to defend against it, but you're never really going to incorporate it. So you're just trying to understand it just enough to deal with it. You're not thinking about it in terms of incorporating your game. And that's kind of how it was for me. But the Marine Corps, conversely, was very different, because the Marine Corps, everything was merit-based, right? Like I couldn't get away with saying or doing something. It was like, how good are you at this specific task in this specific condition? And you're dealing with all walks of life, and you're dealing with shitty situations, and you're having a good time at the same time. And, it was, for me, man, it was life-changing. It was really good. And it's one of those really probably like jiu-jitsu, rare that anything you put into it, you're going to get that much more out of it. And, a lot of, like, just like with people, you can put a ton of effort and energy into something and get nothing out of it. But jiu-jitsu, you put energy and time and effort into it, and you're always getting back at least what you put into it, if not more.
Now, what time period or when did you start training jiu-jitsu?
I started training jiu-jitsu in 96.
96. That's back in the day.
Yeah.
How did you get started? Like, because 96 is a different time period. Today, there's a million podcasts and YouTube channels talking about it. It's a different environment. Back then, you had to really search it out. How did that happen?
So I was doing bare knuckle karate, and I was doing Japanese jiu-jitsu, and I was in the Marine Corps, and I got stationed at a recruiting station as a recruiter. And the office, the business office next door to mine, was a gym. And that gym had a guy named Rodrigo Vaghi, who is now a 6th-degree black belt under Hickson.
Yeah.
And so my instructor at the time was basically a really hard-nosed Marine and former cop who said, dude, I've taught you what I can teach you. You need to go train with those guys. Those guys have this voodoo that no one can stop. So go over there and do that, which at the time, from my perspective, was really cool, because I don't know, you guys are a lot younger than me, but if you remember in the old days, martial arts was like one way. Like, you only do this. You're only with one person. You master that, and you can't go around. Even jiu-jitsu was like that back in the day.
Yeah.
And he said, no, you need to go there and start training with those guys. And so I started with Rodrigo, and within 6 months we were doing NHB, right? And so, I know the young guys don't know this, but NHB.
Yeah, that's the old term. Yeah.
Yeah. So we did NHB, and we fought in what existed at the time, 3 or 4 events. And then eventually came kind of more in your neck of the woods, like hook and shoot, and reality submission fighting and universal challenge and submission fighting championships and all kinds of stuff. And this was in the 90s. And it was illegal in many places. So it was kind of underground. And then we'd go to Indian reservations, or we'd go across borders to a state where it was legal. But it was just a different time, man. And Rodrigo at the time, he didn't care about making money. He had no thought process like, I can't really kick guys out, or I can't run them off. And so practices were hyper intense, right? Guys were puking every class. Normally people would last 1 or 2 classes if they came back even for that second one. So he was running out 90 to 95% of the people coming through the door, and he ended up with the toughest guys. But the classes were nothing kind of like things are today. We'd do 100 arm bars from the mount, 100 arm bars from the guard, 100 triangles from the guard. We would do a sweep, whatever he picked, maybe 50 times. We'd do 1 new submission, and then that was it. We'd spar. And that was every class. But the warm-ups before you could start the class were 30 to 40 minutes of basically bear crawls and duck walks and up downs and drags. And so you would be smoked by the time you started. And then it was, again, ad nauseum, like think about today. And I don't know your gym, but how many guys are like every class doing 100 arm bars from the mount, 100 arm bars from the guard, 100. That was it. Our number was 50 to 100 for every movement that we did. So his guys got really good. We ended up having, we might have had 25 or 30 UFC guys that fought, that came out of that NHB period with me. We probably had 50 world champions. I mean, they're all over the place. So he produced a good group. Now in his mid 50s, Rodrigo's kind of oh shit, I need to get more with the business model. And I'm sure you guys understand that, being young guys today in jiu-jitsu, where, most people can endure it. And, we've got a kids class and we've got women now, and those things didn't exist in the 90s.
Yeah, no, when I first started, it wasn't maybe on the same level, but it was the same thing where you just got thrown to the meat grinder. And then if you hung, you hung. If you didn't, you didn't. That was that. And we were training inside of like a small room in like a weightlifting gym, it's kind of over in the corner. Today we have like beginners classes to try to get the guys up to speed, but I also think maybe the people were different too, because again, like there's a much more casual attitude now where you get people that are like, I heard about it on Jocko's podcast or Joe Rogan or something, and I wanted to try it out. Whereas back in the day, like when I found it, I went to a hook and shoot show. I was watching that. I was like, I want to do this stuff. And I had wrestled in high school. So I was like, I want to fight. And everybody that came in kind of at that time wanted to fight. What was like, when you went to your, like, that first gym, like what was the overall environment like? And how long did you train there at that particular gym before you, like, I guess, moved, or before they went into a different space or something?
Well, the first gym was actually pretty nice. It was in a nice part of town. And there was another Brazilian gentleman who had brought Rodrigo in. And so he had an existing, more traditional martial arts, like a Korean style martial art. And he brought him in to teach jiu-jitsu because he knew who Rodrigo was. And he knew that he was an instructor to Muay Thai back in the early 90s. So he brought him into a nice school. So we started at a pretty nice place, but the vibe that you asked about was very different. So Rodrigo didn't speak much English. And I don't know how often you deal with people that don't speak English, but you go off of mannerisms, right? Am I smiling? Am I using hand gestures? Am I nodding? Am I pointing at stuff? And so when you talk to Rodrigo, you learned very quickly that you needed to smile at him, because if I start talking to you seriously, it doesn't matter what I'm saying, but I'm frowning. You see this? It looks like glasses. And so then you'd start seeing him move towards you and start to kind of bow up like this. And he'd get a frown on his face because he didn't understand what you were saying. He just understood your body language. And, over time, obviously that changed, but it was a very intense environment. And in I'd say the first 3 years, I'd say between 96 and 99, we would have probably every 2 weeks on average, somebody coming in wanting a challenge match. And which is kind of crazy because at that time UFC had been around 3 years, and you kind of knew what Gracie Jiu-Jitsu was if you were paying attention. But I guess there were still enough traditionalists to come in and want to test it out. And so we had that regularly, doors getting locked, people fighting, guys coming in being nasty and basically getting put to sleep repeatedly. It was a testing ground, and it was pretty cool to experience that, because at the time that you're in it, you don't have a frame of reference. So you don't realize that you're at the ground level of something really cool. And you're also like, holy shit, this guy just came in here and wanted to fight, and he got his ass beat and the door's locked, and now he's getting thrown out and dumped on the ground. And you're like, okay, this must be normal for the Brazilians. Okay, cool. This is what it is. Not realizing that that's not normal, because you're in the middle of it. So it was a pretty cool thing to experience on the front end.
How did jiu-jitsu kind of compare to the other martial arts? Like, I mean, you did some of these other, striking, and so this totally different. It's a ground game, and it's a different environment probably than what you're used to, I'm sure. Like, what was it about jiu-jitsu that was kind of intriguing to you? Was it like the effectiveness of it? How easily you could sometimes take care of people that didn't really have much knowledge of jiu-jitsu?
Yeah. So let me put this into context for you. So I was a man, and I was a Marine, and of course I had an ego, and I was very fit. I'm a small dude. I'm 5'10" and 175. But I was super fit, and I was tough. I was used to getting punched in the face and elbowed and kneed, and it had been in plenty of street fights and fought in the Marine Corps and had fought in bare knuckle karate. And the first day that I went in, I went to train with Rodrigo, and I tell everybody this, so this is a common story, but he said, okay, you're coming to train. Yes, I'm training. I said, are you ready to train? I said that to him. And I realize now how stupid that was, but this white belt to this like multi-stripe black belt, like, hey, you ready to train? And he said, buddy, not train with me. Going to train with my guys, buddy. And so he sent me to train with his guys. And this also sounds crazy in modern times, but back in the mid 90s, you basically had white belts, and occasionally you'd have a blue belt. And so blue belt was like, holy shit, I hope I can get to that level someday. And then like occasionally we'd go out to California and you'd see a purple belt. And you're like, holy shit, did you see that? That's a purple belt. And you couldn't even wrap your mind around what it would be like to be that. So we didn't have, you know, many good guys or trainers. So Rodrigo beat the shit out of us. But my first experience was going with this kid who was like 17. His name's BJ. And I go in and I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to beat this kid's ass. This is what it's going to be. And we hit the ground and like, I'm passing his legs because I too was a wrestler. So like I start to pass his leg over. I'm getting triangle choke. Something happened. Something went wrong. I don't really know what happened, but there was a fluke. I'm going to smash this kid now. So we started going, and then I went to the other side to pass, and then he choked me again. So this kid's 17 and maybe 150 pounds and still in high school, just toying with me, right? And I'm used to just destroying men. And so I'm like, holy shit, what just happened? So then I go to the next guy, and he beats my ass, and I go to the next guy, and he beats my ass, and I go to the next guy, and he beats my ass. And I'm dumbfounded, like what just happened? I just got smashed by all these dudes. And so, you know, I've talked to some people about this, but it's hard. You got to suck up your ego and your manhood and say like, I got to keep coming back and I got to spend weeks or months or whatever it takes to master this thing, because I don't feel good. I feel very vulnerable and weak. And my whole life I felt very strong, and I've done very well at these things. And now all of a sudden I can't handle myself. So that was my first experience. And I think after the first few weeks of just sucking it up and then figuring some stuff out, like it was on. And you guys know how it is when you sleep and you eat and you dream, and like you literally can't disconnect from jiu-jitsu in your mind. Everything is correlated to jiu-jitsu, and you're looking and thinking, oh my God, I do this, and I got to do this. And it's just constant calculations, you know. At least I was like that, especially the first probably 5 or 6 years. Not to say that I'm still not, you know, enamored by jiu-jitsu, but you know, I can think about other things, you know?
Yeah, it's funny. I told my my coach when I was coming in to train for the first time, I wrestled a bit and I watched stuff. I was like, yeah, I think I'll probably be like close to blue belt level, you know, and then I got in there and same thing. I got smoked by everybody. You said you fought, right? So you had some like NHB fights and stuff. What was the, I always love hearing these stories because again, the fighting scene is completely different than what it used to be. Cause like you said, like out in California, like they were fighting on reservations. They couldn't fight just in regular places. And, you know, I remember seeing some of the earliest fights that I saw, and they were not what I was expecting at all. Sometimes they were in these small little venues and they were pulling people out of crowds and stuff to get in there. What was your first fight like?
It was different. So first of all, let's back up and talk about how they're structured, because back then there was really a couple formats. So we had one format that was unlimited time, and then we have another one that was basically 1 20-minute round. And then weight classes when I started were either non-existent or like 50 pounds, right? Like you're like, okay, you're under 200, you're 200 to 250, you're over 250. There you go. Those are your classes. So it was very much like that. And, you know, I had a dozen fights, and at the time they were all pro because you're getting paid for everything. And I think even most of them there might be like 7 or so fights on SureDog. So these are fights that are even off the books for the most part. But it was a time where not only the time limits and the conditions and all this stuff were very different. Like the sexiness of having to do the stand-up fighting didn't exist, right? So you didn't have to pander to the audience to, okay, we're going to stand up every 5 minutes and start again standing, so we have a blood fest. It would stay on the ground. If you're on the ground, they didn't lift you back up. Hey, you guys got to get up. No, you stayed there until it was done. So my first couple of fights were submission, and then I got into one that lasted like 20 or 30 minutes and was a decision. Like that's one round. Just one round, your 20-minute round. So think about that component. And then as it went on, you noticed that at all the fighting events you went to, you'd see the same guys. So it was like a handful of guys going to fighting event to fighting event to fighting event. Unlike now where you've got, you know, just you got more guys that want to fight than there are slots to fight. And it was the opposite before. You didn't have enough guys to fill cards. And so guys like Jeff Osborne at Hook and Shoot were searching all over for people. Guys like Brian Madden at Submission Fighting Championships were searching all over. And that was a really cool thing to be a part of. But again, once again, like when you're in it, you don't realize kind of what you're involved with. Like you're on the ground floor of this thing. And there wasn't much money in it, and there was certainly no notoriety. I was talking to someone else about this the other day. we didn't have rash guards. We didn't wear rash guards. We wore like, what would be the equivalent of like Speedos.
Yeah.
And no shirt, no shoes, no nothing. And so like we're rolling on people, sweating on them. And of course you have ringworm and MRSA and all the other stuff that comes along with jiu-jitsu and mats. No one cared. And it was just understood. There was no industry. You didn't sell stuff. You didn't have YouTube to watch videos. None of this stuff existed. So it was a different time, man. It certainly wasn't mainstream. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, what was your first fight like? And then how long had you been training like with Rodrigo and all those guys leading up to that?
I want to say, and you probably find it if you look deep enough, but I want to say it was within 6 months of me training was my first fight. And we had, in fairness to Rodrigo, we had a really tough group of guys. The way we trained was very different. It was gi and no gi, and it was kind of split half and half. And then for striking, he sent us to this really good boxing coach, except the boxing coach used us for his pro fighters. When I say that, I mean, he used us. Like, it was like, okay, go fight with these guys. And they just beat the shit out of us because we weren't going to box. They didn't take any time to teach us or train us. Like, okay, do some shadow boxing. Okay, hit the heavy bag. Okay, get in here and you're sparring with our pros. So what that taught us was to take a punch. But, training for that first fight, when I think about it now, the biggest thing we lacked was that transition space, right? Between striking, like clinch work. We lacked clinch work. And at the time, we didn't have a Muay Thai program. I think we've had our Muay Thai program now like 16 years or something, but we didn't have it. And so clinch work wasn't there. It was basically like you're punching, and now you're touching, you're trying to get a throw or some type of takedown. And then now the fight starts when you hit the ground. So all that stuff was just ancillary for them. And to be fair, when we got to the ground, we'd finish. That was just kind of how it was because we were so far ahead of everybody else, at least in the Midwest with jiu-jitsu. Again, it was like magic.
What was like the goal, like with fighting? What were you trying to accomplish? I guess like life-wise, like, you're in the Marines. You're still in the Marines?
For me, it was a passion. I was in the Marine Corps when it started, and I think I only had 1 or 2 fights after I got out of the Marine Corps. But it was something I was passionate about. It was something that it's kind of like you're testing. You have this new thing, this new power, and you're testing it out. And you're testing it in these different venues, these different forums. And so it was very cool for me to do. And it was kind of just what the guys did. And so if he asked you to fight or told you you should fight or that he recommended you fight, it was kind of like a feather in your cap. Like, it was a big deal. And so from that perspective, I wasn't thinking about it long term. My goal wasn't to be in the UFC. Now, we had a lot of guys that were, and most of those guys, I would say 80% of them were roofers, right? I don't know, if you know anything about roofing, but it's a pretty tough job.
Yeah.
And so they were looking for anything other than that. And luckily in my case, the Marine Corps had paid for me to go to school. So I had the Marine Corps experience, and then I had a college education. And then my intention was to start a business when I got out. And just by chance, I ended up getting into the protective field. And then from that, ended up working for Madonna. And that on the resume kind of helped me to do a lot of other things. And then ended up doing, more military type stuff overseas. So I didn't go down the path of fighting full time. I would say like our training camps were probably 2 months, and our training days, we all worked 40, 50, 60 hours a week and trained. And so our training days were probably 3 hours. I would say 3 hours a day, 6 days a week. And it was, again, take a beating boxing, get to a clinch, get a wrestling takedown, and then you do jiu-jitsu on the ground. That was the goal.
Now, is there any like cool story behind how you got into the protection business?
So the Marines have a general structure and general orders that basically set up security. And that's really what they do. They do security for the bases, they do security overseas, and then they do protective service operations. They call it PSD. And basically, I had been trained in that stuff, but wasn't actually doing that. I got sent out to Los Angeles to do something in what was called the motion picture liaison, right? So the Marines and the Air Force and the Army and the Navy have an office in LA on Wilshire Boulevard in Santa Monica that basically goes out to, they send Marines out to movies to teach actors how to walk and talk like Marines. Yeah. And so I got sent out there, and man, that was like 99-ish. And my instructor, Rodrigo, his instructor was Hickson Gracie. So he said, boy, buddy, gonna go train with Hickson, buddy. So, cool. So I'm gonna go train with Hickson. So I immediately went out there. I got a shitty little crappy apartment near Santa Monica, so it was high rent district. So I had like, I don't know, I had a 175, 200 square foot apartment, efficiency we'll call it, and
closet.
It basically was. And so I started training out there, and then I ended up later moving in with my roommate, a guy named Henry Akins, and Henry ended up teaching out there at Hickson's. And so I was at Hickson's for however many years. And while I was out there, I had met some businessmen that would go down to Mexico for a couple different things. One, for business trips to Mexico City, and two, for vacation to, beach resorts and stuff like that with their families. And I was a fighter, and I was a Marine, and I spoke Spanish. So with those three things, they said, hey, we need a guy to go down with us. You can translate, you can be our security guy, you can do this, you can do that. I said, cool, great. And so I ended up making relationships in Mexico, and I built a team in Mexico. And so then we started taking like directors and, people in the music industry. And then Guy Ritchie started training at Hickson's, and I had met him, and he's like, oh, I heard you're doing this and that, and we need an extra guy, and I needed a jiu-jitsu coach while I'm on the road and while we're filming. And so that kind of came to be. And then, I was doing that, and then I went back. I think we were in New York at the time, so I was training at Henzo's with Guy, and we went back to LA, and Henry, I don't know if you guys know Henry, but Henry does a lot of seminars and videos and all that stuff. So Henry, my former roommate, said, hey, I want you to meet this guy. I'm going to train, and I need another guy. Will you come with me? I'm like, yeah, cool. And again, this is like 2001. Cool, let's go. And it ended up being the singer of this band called Tool. And so I'm working with him and training him, and I don't know who this guy is at all. And we're just having a good time working on stuff, Blair. And he's a smaller guy, likes to talk shit and laugh and joke and whatever. And he was training at Hickson's as well. So we got along good. And then it ended when I ended the next job, I ended up working for him, and it just started kind of rolling, just like anything does. You start to build your resume, you start to make a network. But LA is full of money and full of people that either want or need protection, or at least want the aesthetic of it. And so our business moved pretty quickly. And up to COVID, we were punching along pretty heavy. In fact, if it wasn't for COVID, I probably wouldn't be doing this interview, because we're promoting books and promoting training and other stuff that otherwise, would be much more low key.
I gotcha. Did you guys ever have any, like, I'm sure you have a bunch, but is there any that stand out? Do you have any, like, I guess, crazy stories from when you're doing the security work, where people are trying to get to these celebrities or these business people or anything like that?
Well, because we do most of our stuff overseas, about 65% of our operations are overseas. We have all kinds of cultural issues, and you have this really sharp or steep learning curve. So when we started out in Mexico, I can think of several different things, but when we started out in Mexico, we're down there with a client, and we've got a vehicle, and we go into a restaurant, and everything's good, and we come out, and as we're coming out, there's a cop doing this kind of thing outside the car, putting a ticket on the car, and I'm like, in Spanish to him, what's this for? And he's like, oh, you don't have plates. And so I look at the front of the car, no plates. I look at the back of the car, no plates. I'm like, motherfucker. So somebody took these plates. Somebody stole these plates while we were in Mexico. Okay, cool, whatever. So I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, somebody didn't steal our plates. The cops stole our plates. And so I go over to him. I'm like, hey, man, here's the money for the ticket or whatever. Can you rip it up? And he rips it up. I give him $20. And when he did that, I expected him to give me the plates, and he didn't. And he's just looking at me, just staring at me. And I'm like, how much for the plates? And he just did this. He just shrugged, which means he had plates. So I give him another $20, and he reaches in his patrol car and pulls out the plates and hands me the plates with no shame. Like his expression didn't change.
Oh, man.
So, a lot of cultural exchanges like that. We were down in Argentina, and we had a meeting with the president in what they call La Casa Rosada, which is their equivalent. It's the Pink House. It's the equivalent to the White House, but it's in Buenos Aires. And we're doing our protective work and stuff, and we're leaving. And then as we're coming out of the equivalent of the White House, we get jammed up with a protective detail with up armored cars. And you don't roll windows down in up armored cars, right? That's a big no-no, right? The whole point of having protection is not to roll it down so bullets come in and get stuck inside and don't go through the other side. So I end up getting out of the car and I'm talking to this guy and he's doing this. He doesn't stop doing this the whole time. And I'm giving him, I don't know if you know what an attaché is, but at each like official governmental place, there's a connecting point, which is usually a person like a military colonel who's the liaison to the president. And I'm giving him the attaché's card, who's like, you know, imagine this guy that's writing the ticket is a white belt and the attaché is like a 10th degree black belt. He's looking at the card and he just throws it back at me. Doesn't give a shit. All he wants is money to let our detail move on. And so figuring that kind of stuff out was a cool but sharp learning curve. You know, we've had attacks on principals, but they've been, you know, minor. Some guys trying to set up or stage a kidnapping overseas, guys trying to knife some people in the group. We've had, you know, dancers and actors pulled, like sub-level actors pulled and taken places and held, but nothing, I wouldn't say that's too crazy or over the top. The stuff that we see that from is more on the executive or dignitary side. And obviously that kind of stuff, we don't even name who our clients are on that front. Celebrities are a little different because they tell people who we are and what we're doing. And therefore we can talk about pretty much anything they talk about.
Okay.
If you look up, some situations probably with my name, you probably find things like Tommy Lee getting held hostage in Eastern Europe. That was something I was involved with. You can find all kinds of little things. Probably better for me not to tell the stories.
Yeah. You know, I want to backtrack a little bit, man. Like Rickson, you know, Henry Akins, Renzo Gracie, like all these are like some really, really legends in jiu-jitsu. What was it like meeting Rickson? Did you know who he was? Like, you know, I mean, he was probably first time and maybe even now considered one of the greatest of all time. Like, did you know about Rickson when you met him, and what was it like training with him?
Yeah. So, because my coach, obviously I revered my coach. I was at the time I was probably a 4-stripe blue belt or a 1-stripe purple belt, but I was in that kind of range because my coach was so good and my coach just smashed me. And he told me that his coach Rickson smashed him. And I couldn't wrap my mind around that. Like, how does this dude get smashed by anybody? And to be fair, he's a beast of a man. I mean, my coach is an, you know, he's just a freak human. Like, he's super strong, super fast, even his mid 50s, you know, like he didn't train for 10 years and then went and won worlds, like trained for 2 months and then went and won worlds. Like, that's just the kind of person he is. He's dedicated, he's technical, but he's really tough and he's gifted. So I'm trying to wrap my head around who would be able to do anything to this man. And so I went out there and obviously I came from Rodrigo. So it was, you know, I was received with open arms. And I had already competed in a couple of Rickson's tournaments. He had a couple big tournaments in the 90s, which were the early days of very well-run tournaments. I don't know if you guys were around in the old days, but you would have a referee in regular clothes, like waving at people in the stands. And if you weren't Brazilian, you were going to probably lose if you didn't get a submission. So it was very different. Rickson was the first one to put on that I saw some really organized tournaments. And I think, to be fair, it was a group of judo organizers that came in to actually organize his tournament. So Rickson knew me because he had awarded me on the podium a couple times gold medals and my weight class in open. And then Rodrigo had called him and said, hey, one of my best students is coming out. Here you go. So when I got out there, I had a high expectation for Rickson. They weren't fighting MMA. The guys weren't in the gym. They were doing just pretty much gi jiu-jitsu. So that was a little different than where I had come from. But the first time I got to go with Rickson was probably after a few months of being out there, you know, at his house. At the time he was living in a place called Pacific Palisades, and we were training in his garage. And I remember, like, I don't want to go hard, like, because then he'll misinterpret me going hard. So I want to be smooth but technical. And I just remember it's like one thing he takes away, and then you're trying to do everything, and he's just going slow. And he never did anything that was new to me. He never did anything that was, you know, crazy technical or crazy, you know, physical. It was just like taking stuff away, and you never got it back. You just take the next thing, and then you're done. It's like take 1, take 2, take 3, take 4, you're done. And then, you know, he used to be famous for, and he used to do this at his academy all the time. He would have us fight with one hand in the belt. So each of us would have one hand. And then he would do, a lot of times he would roll with us where he'd have both of his hands in his belt, and he'd just be using his feet and his shoulders. And so that was a very unique kind of experience to have. we had, 3 or 4 people come in during that time that had intended to challenge Hickson, but I didn't get to make any of that stuff. That was at a school called Pico, and I was at the Palisade School when I came in. But rolling with Hickson is, for lack of other terms, demeaning, right? Because you think you know something, you understand something, you're capable of doing something. And it didn't change when I was a purple belt, a brown belt, a black belt. It was the same. It was just like you could never get to that level to deal with it. Like he capitalized on any tiny small mistake. So I would say his jiu-jitsu is very clean. He either doesn't make mistakes, or when he makes them, he corrects them so quickly you don't have an opportunity to see them. And then every little thing that you do wrong, if you're out of place, an inch or off angle, he takes it away from you and he punishes you for it, and you never get it back. It's a tough role, man. And it's not hard. It's not like crazy, like physical, where Rodrigo is very physical and he punishes you. Hickson kind of embarrasses you almost, at least in my case.
Huh. I've heard kind of people express that about him. It's just like he just kind of, it's almost like a vice grip or something. It just got tightens a little more. It's just you have less wiggle room each time.
I don't know, man. It felt, my coach feels like a vice grip. Hickson feels more like drowning. It's like it's just
neither one sounds good.
Yeah, you're trying to find a place to get air. You're trying to find a way to kind of come up above water, and then everything you do, he's punishing you for, and not a jiu-jitsu punishment, not any other way. But his style, his simplicity, his uniqueness, that coupled with the fact that he's just a unique person. I don't think there's any other person like him. You look at guys like Roger Gracie now, who's, again, a very simple, very easy style to understand, but he can apply it under stress, which is a huge deal. But Hickson was born who Hickson was, man. I don't think that was just made. I think he was born very special.
Mm-hmm. And then how long did you train before you got your black belt?
A long time. I think I was at 12 or 13 years. So I was traveling a lot. So like I was very fast, white belt to blue belt to purple belt. And then I stayed in purple belt for like 8 years. And then fast from purple to brown and brown to black. So when I was traveling, I think I've been to 148 countries now. Wow. And, like 700 cities. And so I was traveling nonstop. I was traveling 11 months out of the year. So I was missing a lot of training. And in the old days, you didn't train outside of your team. And this is probably a really crazy concept for you guys, but
no, I was around like even early, like on, like we still like, maybe it was phasing out elsewhere. It was still very much that way when I first started training. Like, this is your team. You don't train with anyone else. And if you did, you had to be really hush hush about it, because otherwise you'd get in trouble,
100%, man. So that was how it was for me. So I had to ask Rodrigo. So it was no issue for me to train with Hickson. That was easy. And then I had to ask I said, hey, I'm in New York, there's nobody out here. And Guy Ritchie wants to train at Henzo's, which I do too. I just need permission. And Rodrigo was like, yeah, Henzo's great. He's part of the family. As long as he knows where you come from, that you're from the Hickson team. And yeah, he knows, we're good. So I trained there, and that was kind of it. And then eventually things loosened up to the point where, like, as I'm traveling, I can go train anywhere. Right. So for example, I had to do a federal training in Kentucky, where you're at, and a place called LaGrange. It just happened to be that they got the federal funding to do this thing. Well, I don't have any time. We're doing 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., but there's like a little school on the corner. Okay, well, I can go over there and train jiu-jitsu for an hour or whatever. So now anywhere I go, even if I don't have a lot of time, I have a place to train. And then through the network that you build over 20 or 30 years, like Henry told me the other day, he's doing a seminar down there, I don't know, next week or the weekend after. So he's like, oh, if you go down there, train with this guy, or if you do this, go train here. And so that network that you have allows you access to certain groups or people, or like the Muay Thai guys, or like go train with the real fighters in Louisville, so go talk to Eric, and Eric will set you up, or whatever. So you, over 20 something years, you develop this nice network of guys. So anywhere you go, you can train jiu-jitsu or Muay Thai, which is very cool. But that is not how it used to be. And that's probably like the last 15 years, I would say, where now we have this nice network and we can cross train. And I think that's probably in part due to the fact that everything's on YouTube or Instagram or wherever you want to look. And it's less secretive now.
Yeah, and I feel like the generation that came up, like, at least for the guys that like I came up with, we didn't necessarily like being under someone's thumb like that. Like it was kind of like one of these things where maybe it's an American thing where we were like, we like being under this person because that's our dude, right? That's our coach. Like we'll do everything for him, no problem. But like we want to go just roll with these people, not because we're trying to leave, because we just want to go see what happens and like test things out and then that kind of thing, And so
Absolutely.
So then when all of us became coaches and everything else, we're like, yeah, that whole mindset's BS. Get rid of that stuff,
Yeah, and it's cool because you learn different ideas, different approaches, and you can bring it back to your team. And my coach now, has a different mindset. It's like, hey, just make sure they know where you're from and who you represent and what team you're on and who you're competing for. The only downside I've found is that if you end up cross training with guys that are your weight, your age, your belt, you end up seeing them in competition, which I've done. I went to train with some other guys in my general area, and I'm beating them, finishing them in training, and then all of a sudden they're in my bracket. Now they know my game, and then all of a sudden now I've got them in Pan Ams in the finals, and I'm winning, but I win by 2 points instead of getting a submission because the guy knows my game. And with 2 points, man, it could have gone either way. You know what I mean? So you have those kind of downfalls that exist in it. But other than that, I think that the growth potential outweighs any kind of like loyalty concern.
Yeah. What was it like traveling like that? I mean, because for me, like traveling zaps me. If I travel like consecutive weekends and stuff like that, it really drains me. How did you deal with traveling like 11 months out of the year?
So for me, I had traveled in the Marine Corps, and so it wasn't brand new to me when I started traveling like crazy. But you learn little tricks and bits and pieces of how to pack, how to maneuver stuff, how hotels operate or work, how you start to figure out how everything works, and then you figure out how to maximize it. And then you start to figure out, okay, what do I need for this trip, and how do I get into a smaller bag, and what goes faster through lines at the airport, and then how do I navigate international stuff easier, and all these little small things that you learn along the way, just like in jiu-jitsu, add
Get
up.
your reps in. Yeah,
absolutely. And so all of a sudden now you're super efficient, it's more comfortable, and you become used to it, and you develop miles. Okay, I realize now these miles I can buy like access to the Admirals Club, and now I'm going to go sleep in the Admirals Club and have free coffee and free food and free whatever. And I did that with miles or whatever it may be. But you learn all the tricks along the way, just exactly like jiu-jitsu, and so it becomes much more comfortable. And so also like jiu-jitsu, you learn to be comfortable in very uncomfortable situations. And so that just becomes kind of how you do business through exposure, these repeated exposures, those are reps. And so you just find comfort in it. And so I'm just as comfortable, sleeping in the dirt in a tent or sleeping in a hotel in a foreign country or wherever as I am in my own bed.
Is there any places that you've traveled that maybe you would never go back, or you've just like, I will never work at this area ever again, or is there anything that you really like going? Any place that really are some of your favorite places to go?
Yeah, I would say if I had to pick a spot that is not ideal for working in, I would say the continent of Africa is a very challenging environment in terms of resources and people and how business is done. It's just the infrastructure is poor, disease is high, corruption is very high, violence is very high. So it's a challenging environment to work in, especially given what kind of work I'm doing. But there are other places where that exists too, but there are so many positive factors that it offsets it. So like if I'm in Brazil or Colombia or Venezuela, they have the same kind of situation, but it's much more inviting, and the culture seems richer, and the foods are better, and the people seem very passionate, and it almost balances out kind of the risk. So for me, and maybe it's just personality based because I'm accustomed to those cultures, so that's more comfortable for me. But I enjoy probably spending time in New Zealand or spending time in Sardinia or going to Malta. Those kinds of places for me are super cool to go back to. A lot of the places that we go to are repeat visits. And that's where it's nice when you get to build that relationship and the local culture and the people, and you're in a foreign country and you're driving yourself around, and the bread maker over here, and the cleaner over here, and the guy that makes wine over here, and the jiu-jitsu school owner over here. And so you have kind of a relationship with that whole community. You start to get to know those people and the language and kind of how they live. For me, That's the bonus to traveling. And it takes, I'm from Missouri, man. It's like Kentucky. I'm from this little state that is not known for being worldly. And so you kind of get exposures to these places and have experiences you otherwise never ever have anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, it's really interesting to just hear that. I'm curious as far as like any places you've traveled that like the jiu-jitsu, the level of jiu-jitsu maybe surprised you, and also on that note as well, like taking some of these actors or musicians that do jiu-jitsu, taking them to a school, and what is that like? I mean, do you see people that are like, oh, I know who that is, I want to get a roll with them, and is that kind of a weird situation?
Yeah. So your first question, I would say that the UK has really developed very quickly with their jiu-jitsu because they were almost non-existent. And then really like the best recently that I've seen has been kind of in Slavic countries, kind of like pull into Eastern European countries have really taken off, like gone from nothing to all of a sudden you go there and they're like really talented guys. They're tough and they're hardworking, but they're becoming very technical. And that's, as you guys know, a very dangerous combination. When they're mentally tough, they're physically hard, and then they're technical on top of that. So that's where I've seen the most kind of progress in the world. And to your second question, I'm very guarded about taking celebrities into those realms because you might have a great gym, and I can't speak to your gym because obviously I've never been there, but in every gym, there's at least one asshole, if not more, who will want a notch in his belt to say, yeah, I kicked the shit out of that guy, I choked out the singer of that band, or I beat this actor's ass, or I did whatever. So I'm very, very cautious, and I'll go to places that I know, even if it's not maybe the best place to take them, and I'll find the guy that has a lower level of ego or who has things more in check, or I'll find like if I have a smaller artist, a smaller person to work with them with me, or I won't let them spar at all. I'll let them drill techniques and I'll be the guy they drill techniques with. Then they sit on the wall and watch me spar with the guys. So yeah, I absolutely have to manage that. There's one component, like if they're just going to ask for autographs and pictures and all of that, that's going to occur. That's not my concern. My concern is them getting hurt, right? Because if they're out on a world tour making hundreds of millions of dollars, and then we go to jiu-jitsu and I'm the catalyst for jiu-jitsu, I'm the connecting point, and they get hurt and they cancel a tour that would have made them $500 million, I'm not going to feel good about that. And I'm also out of a job. So it's not a smart play for me to allow it to happen. It's probably also as a coach or as a guy who's leading them down a path, not the right thing to do for them, So that's a very guarded thing for me. So if I'm going to a gym with a client, I need to know the people that I'm with.
So man, I'm curious, you sent us a book, and right there. And what is this book about exactly? And then where did it come from? Like, what's the information about, and where did it come from?
So my business, I'm in the business of protecting people, right, from all kinds of things. And this book is the third book that I wrote. And this book is focused on the mindset and skills and tactics, techniques, procedures, systems, protocols that can be implemented by normal people. So if the two of you never served in the military or law enforcement, and let's say you weren't jiu-jitsu black belts, and you needed to understand what you could do, how you could think, how you could look at systems to make yourself a harder target or improve your chance of survival, or just not be in certain situations, this book would give you those pieces of information, right? So some of the very simple areas you look at, like we look at the attack equation, right? So when you look at attacks, and you know this because you mentioned, being attacked when you were younger, the attacker picks the time, they pick the place, and they pick the method of attack. The fourth variable is your response to that attack. So they're picking 75% and you're responding. So they get to control the key variables, and all you're doing is reacting. And as you guys know, when you look at action versus reaction, 99% of the time, action is going to beat reaction. And so the only way to have a positive reaction and to beat them with the reaction is through wiring, through exposure, right? Just like doing reps in jiu-jitsu. So there's a thing called recognition prime decision making that we talk about in the book from a guy named Klein, where essentially you have these neural pathways that exist, right? So you have neurons that are connected through a synapse, and basically you're building these connections in your mind so that when you have a certain situation happen, you have this recall. Hey, I think I have the solution for it. And bam, you can implement it. So in very many ways, it's like jiu-jitsu, right? You have this exposure. Okay, I know that I do this to this situation. Oh, that just happened. It's very similar to a triangle, to an armbar or whatever. And this is a good defense for that. So even though I don't know this exact armbar or this exact triangle, I think this defense might work because the components are the same. So we do that. We spend a lot of time talking about something called baseline anomaly. So baseline anomaly, and this will also be something from your childhood that you're familiar with, is learning your environment and understanding what's normal in your environment, right? So if I know what kind of people are like here, what the people are doing, what they're wearing, what kind of stuff they're saying, what their position is on something, what the lighting's like, where the doors are, I'm learning the normalcy of my environment. And then I'm able to identify an anomaly, right? Something that doesn't fit in the environment. So we have anomalies above the baseline and below the baseline. So let's say in this room, I know that guys walk around with shin pads on and boxing gloves and wrist wraps and, mouthpieces in and headgear, and they're in the ring or out of the ring or whatever. But then all of a sudden, I have, instead of having 50 guys in here, I have 2 guys. Something's wrong. It's an anomaly below the baseline, meaning that things have dropped off. Things have been removed from the environment. Let's say I have now all of a sudden 1,000 guys in this space. That's an anomaly above the baseline, meaning a bunch was added to it. Anytime that I have, it's called the BAD algorithm, BAD, baseline plus anomaly equals decision. So anytime I have these anomalies, I have to identify, is the anomaly a benign anomaly, meaning it's not going to hurt me. It's just that today was a holiday and therefore something changed. Or is it critical? Hey, they found out I was in town and they all want to kill me. And so they showed up here because they knew I was going to be here. And that critical anomaly is where I have to make a decision. So the decision basically comes down to this. Am I going to continue as planned? Okay, I'm going to come in here. I'm going to spar with these 1,000 guys I don't know who are all 350 and super aggro and just got out of prison. Or am I going to change behavior and say, oh yeah, I'll be back in a second, and then go grab all my boys and then come back here and train? Or am I going to cancel? And like, as I walk in the door and see it, I do a 180, I'm back out the door, and GTFO, I'm out of here. So either continue, change, or cancel. And so we get people thinking along those lines. And that's in connection with situational awareness or environmental analysis. So we talk about that. If you were to look at the contents there, we talk about, how people are motivated and why they act in certain nefarious ways, right? Like MICE is a common acronym that we use. So money, ideology, like ideology now would be like political ideology, religious ideology, or jiu-jitsu ideology, or whatever it is. Coercion or compromise, ego or extortion, and those kinds of things get manipulated for power or money or whatever. So we start talking through processes, how to do threat assessments, and even really super simple things like, if I know that there are always problems at that bar and I don't want problems, I don't go to that bar on a Friday or Saturday night between 10 o'clock at night and 1 a.m, because there's always a fight there and there's always a stabbing and there's always a shooting. So I don't go where there are problems if I don't want problems. 2 is, if I end up in that spot for whatever reason, I made a bad decision or a friend, enticed me to go for whatever reason. As soon as I start seeing these variables play out that tell me it's about to get nasty, I leave. I don't stay for the confrontation. I leave. Okay, this guy's amping up. That guy's amping up. They're starting to move bar stools out. These guys are peacocking. And now all of a sudden I see this happening. I don't stay to get my iPhone out and go, oh man, this is going to be really cool. I leave. And so then I don't end up in it. And then the last thing is for us is to stay and fight. And part of that is doing what you're doing, which is like, okay, I know there's a door there. There's a door over there. And part of that is just knowing where the problems can come from, knowing what the solutions can be, and then understanding what the best or correct response is under stress. And so this book kind of gets into those systems and talks about how it works and certain approaches that you can take to, let's say, deter people from ever attacking you, or to delay the onset of an attack. And then it's like defense mechanisms that you can put into place. But it's mostly about the systems and psychologies and the approach to get you thinking in the right way, to limit your exposure to being a victim, essentially.
That's so that was kind of going to get my next question is, if you walk into a room, what's like your checklist really fast? Like if you're teaching someone that has no knowledge at all, you're going to go into a room or environment you're unaware of. What's like your checklist? What are you looking for? Just kind of real quick.
That's a little more complicated than I can answer in a short period of time, because it's really relevant to the environment and what's going on. That will determine what's most important. But it's kind of like saying, like, you're going to roll with somebody and, what are you looking for? Well, I can tell you some simple things, but it really depends on who I'm rolling with, what's happening, and me feeling stuff out. But like, let's say when I look at you two, right, Chewy's bigger than you are. So I'm going to assume that he's stronger than you are. And I'm going to assume that he probably plays more of a top game. And I'm going to assume certain things. I'm going to look at like height for your length, for your reach. Like, I don't want to be trading punches with a guy who's got really long arms or long legs, generally speaking. I don't want to be under a guy who's, 300 pounds. I don't want to, there are certain things that you look at and you say, okay, I think his game is going to be this way based on what I can see. Rooms are the same way. I'm starting to look at how it's configured. And then even with houses and stuff, like where certain pipes are on the outside tells me where water's at. Like, okay, so it's a bathroom or kitchen. Or, when you look at the structure, like if an A-frame house, where load-bearing walls are. You can look at it and you can say, okay, this correlates to that, and therefore it's most likely that it's X or Y or Z. And so we look at rooms the same way for doors and for windows and for people and where they're situated and where I'm able to physically move and not move and where I can barricade and how I can barricade doors into a room or how I can open doors in case I get barricaded into a space. So, that's a more complex answer, but it is not unlike jiu-jitsu, right? When you're assessing a person before you either start rolling or at the beginning of a roll, when you kind of feel things out, or even the same with MMA or Muay Thai, you're feeling stuff out, but you start with a basic understanding because I've just done this quick assessment and I'm going to make some assumptions because I don't have any other information to work off of.
So what do you think about the about like sort of self-defense techniques? So, when I was a young kid, growing up before the UFC started, self-defense stuff was pretty much all like, striking art based. And then there was a lot of BS going on back in the day and like mystical voodoo type stuff.
Yes.
And then it's changed over the years. And as someone that's been around, involved in a lot of older martial arts before, and then you've done jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai and all this stuff now. What are some useful tips, I guess you'd say, or useful arts to get into in regards to self-defense?
So I have a lot to say about this because I come from the original kind of pressure testing of things.
Yeah.
People don't like my answer because it's not sexy. I think you need very simple techniques. Mm-hmm. I think you need to do a lot of reps of very simple techniques that are proven. I think you need to be able to do it with clothes on, without clothes on. I think you need to be able to with weapons, without weapons, with gear on, without gear on. I think you need to be able to do it in the dirt, on rocks, on ice, in the snow, on the side of a hill, under a car, inside a car, on the hood of a car. And so the only way to be able to do that is to train that way. So if I were to send you a video of how we train, I don't mean classic jiu-jitsu or Brazilian jiu-jitsu classically, but how we train with the military and law enforcement guys, and now even some of the civilian market, we're training that way. And we've been training that way for a long time. Now, you can't do that for a long period of time because you're going to be hurt pretty bad. But, training on rocks is different. Training on sand is different. Training, in the backseat of a car where you don't have freedom of movement is different. Training with a gun is different. Training with a knife is different. Mm-hmm. And what I'll say about that is, jiu-jitsu, this is a broad stroke. You guys, I love jiu-jitsu and I got a bunch of stripes on my belt.
Sure.
So don't take this the wrong way, but jiu-jitsu also has a lot of major flaws to it. And some of these flaws for reality fighting, meaning street fighting, where you have one or more opponents and you have weapons that could be introduced, is that jiu-jitsu, we train on soft mats. We train on soft mats for a reason, because going into concrete or going into anything else like that that's hard is no good. So surface space is a big problem for us for fighting. Number two, we lack mobility in jiu-jitsu, meaning when we get into some type of entanglement on the ground, it's very hard to disengage, which is not good. And then another thing that happens is we have proximity to weapons. When we're doing jiu-jitsu, we're connected in a way that if I have weapons on my waistline, you have access to my weapons and I have access to yours. So that complicates our problem a lot more. Another problem with jiu-jitsu that we have is you have lack of sight lines, right? So if I'm on the ground, I can't see up over the hood of a car. I can't see through a window. Also, we spend a lot more energy. There's a lot more fatigue involved in what we're doing than standing up and moving or walking or running, because you're standing on your legs all day. You were meant to do it. You've done that since you were a kid. So there are a lot of flaws to it. The reason to train jiu-jitsu for military and law enforcement is because you get taken there. That's not where you want the fight to go. So you get taken there. Or in law enforcement, that's where you're going to affect the arrest and you're going to be able to cuff from that position. So there are those reasons, but there are a lot of flaws to it. And I think even for me, who absolutely loves jiu-jitsu, I have to recognize these flaws because we pressure test it and we find out what happens when we go out there. And if you guys want, remind me, I'll send you some videos of us doing stuff in the snow with weapons in the back seats of cars, against the hood, how it changes things. Like if you're on a angle, like a slope, a 45-degree angle, and you're rolling down the hill, your jiu-jitsu is not going to work the same as it does when you're on a flat, soft mat, right? And when you're getting hit in the head with a curb, it's not going to work the same way. So, it is probably, from my estimate, just my personal opinion, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, boxing, and wrestling are pretty much, the combat sports that I would stick with for any type of military or law enforcement special operations guys, 100%. But I would modify it to make it as realistic as possible versus, berimbolo or inverted or anything. That's awesome for points and for understanding how it works, but that's not so good for you when you deal with weapons or 2 or 3 people and getting stomped. So, for me, if you want to play a certain game, I'm all about it. You should do that. I don't begrudge anybody for doing what they do, but if we're talking about reality, number one, first and foremost, pressure test it. Don't have an idea without testing it. You have to test it, and you have to test it under stress when you're smoked.
Yeah, that was like something where, even with the guys, like we obviously do plenty of sport jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. But we still have days where like we do like grappling with fighting. So we're actually fighting each other. There's punches, there's kicks, there's things coming at you. And I think it's super important. And, even like with the guys, I've always told them, like, I encourage the guys to do the striking stuff and do the everything else, do everything. Cause I think it's silly to think that you just need one thing, right? Like one thing and you're complete. And I think you have to get punched. I think you have to get hit a little bit. Like 100%. I've seen even jiu-jitsu schools like practice self-defense. I've been to a quote unquote self-defense class, and they're like they were catching punches, and they're like, there's no one actually punching them. And I'm like, we're getting away from what we were supposed to be doing in the first place. Because what was cool about jiu-jitsu was it was effective because it was real. We were trying to do this stuff, and now we're kind of going the opposite direction where we're going through like a self-defense situation. None of you guys have got hit, and I'm looking at this as a guy who fought. I'm like, it's way different when you get hit like one good time and your bell's rung a little bit, and then you're trying to grab and grapple and everything else.
Look at this repeatedly. We see this time and time again, and I from Mike Tyson to Stephan Bonner, all these guys have talked about that. And you look at this even recently with Rodolfo Vieira, who is a phenomenal grappler. Look at what happened to him. This low-level grappler finishes him with a guillotine. Why? Because he was smoked and he was making mistakes and he couldn't recover because he was smoked. And that's the difference between a fight. Now, that's a fight with the referee. That's a fight with time limits. That's a fight on a soft mat. Start to add weapons and start to add, a little bit more real scenario. And then you kind of see a different picture. And it's all about what you want to do. But like one thing I'm seeing now, there are a lot of trends, but one trend that I'm seeing now is jiu-jitsu guys teaching a lot of firearms and knife defenses and stuff. And it makes no sense because they've never been in those situations. They're teaching stuff that is going to get people hurt or killed. And that's just really super dangerous. So I would challenge those people to actually test it with a real knife. I mean, you could get a marker, you get a marker, I have a marker, and we're going to see who gets cut. See what happens, because you're going to have marking all over you. Everybody's getting cut. And when you start talking about arterial, right, lacerations or cuts, that's a bad day. You got 30 seconds till you pass out. You got 2 minutes till you die. So you're going to play that game. You're making up these moves and you think that's going to be good enough. It doesn't work that way. Yeah. And this is one of the things that I've talked with a couple of people, and you and I share Cleared Hot together on that particular thing, I think. But I was talking to Andy about this, in that jiu-jitsu is so cool because what happens is, let's say, we could be 6-7 minutes, whatever you guys use. Let's call it 6 minutes. You're going to do 6-minute rounds, and you're going to endure this battle for 6 minutes, and you're dealing with all this stress. And at the end of it, it's done, but you've got 20 or 30 seconds. And then now you're back into another 6-minute battle. So you're constantly under stress and pressure. So from that perspective, I agree with the mental conditioning that's there. And that's true with all combat sports. So that's why I mentioned those 4, because those 4s are not practicing katas in the air, right? They're not talking about ripping your eyes out or ripping your ears off or ripping your throat out. And I've had this conversation for 25 years. You think you're going to rip my eyes out, and you've never ripped a person's eyes out in your life. You think you're going to rip my throat. You've never done it in your life. You think you're going to rip my ears. Now look, this is a bundle of nerves, this eyeball. When my finger goes in, what's going to happen is the eye's going to move. My finger is going to go underneath, or my finger may go over the top. Now, that's if I'm staying still and not moving. Now, if I'm moving, you know how hard it is even to hit a head with a boxing glove. And now you think you're going to take your fingers and go in my eye and this is crazy shit. And the guys have never done it. And they're like, what can you do under stress that you've never done in your life? It just doesn't make sense. So there's all kinds of crazy stuff that comes from, more of the traditional martial arts. Oh, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. Like, okay, but you don't do that and you've never done it. And so this is the beauty of jiu-jitsu, of Muay Thai, of boxing, of wrestling, and things like Dutch kickboxing and other combat sports, because they're doing the thing they're going to do in a fight in training. And like you said, this is a mental rep. This is a stress inoculation test that I'm doing each time. And the beauty of that too is in your own school, maybe not as much, but you go to another school or you go to a competition where there is stress, where there is an unknown variable. And now you've got to manage your fear. You've got to manage your anxiety, and you got to figure out, okay, how do I deal with this? And then get to business. And I absolutely agree with that 100%. That's the beauty of combat sports. We should do them. It's great for humans. And like you said, it helps you get over whatever fears you have because you're attacking your fear. That's what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. I think, a lot of this relates to like police officers. They don't get a ton of reps. They don't get a ton of like.
But why don't they get a ton of reps? Let's start with that. I agree.
Most of the time, like it's a normal day. You go, maybe you write a ticket or two or whatever. You're not getting an altercation, right? Like, so when you have that situation, when you get an altercation with somebody, like you don't have the reps or you're not training that. So then bad stuff happens, right? Like people get, punched or hit when you could control the situation more easily. So I guess my question to you is like, how do you propose that maybe you improve the, just that whole process of detaining people or kind of that interaction?
Well, that's a very complex question in this time, but I'll start with this. First of all, the average police officer in America is getting 6 months of training, but the problem is that they're not just doing one job, right? Mm-hmm. They're doing, okay, I'm a policeman and I'm dealing with civil issues that I shouldn't be dealing with. And now I'm dealing with medical emergencies and now I'm dealing with this, and they're dealing with all these jobs. So you're spreading them very thin. Gotcha. And then you have this tool belt that they've got on their waistline that you guys don't wear when you're training, right? And on that tool belt, they have a gun and they have OC spray and they have a baton and they have a taser and now they have a bolo and they have cuffs and they have all these things. And the more choices they have, the harder it is to make a decision under stress. It's called Hick's Law. So if you look at Hick's Law, it will very clearly, more choices, more time in my decision-making cycle, right? So my OODA loop expands, which means I slow down in my decision-making process. So the first thing is they don't get a lot of training because they're spending so much time training on other things that happen more frequently than use of force. So use of force doesn't happen that frequently. Regardless of what the media tells you, it really doesn't happen that much, right? Sure, especially in America. We've got 328 million people here. You have 1 million police encounters today, and there might be 1 or 2 officer-involved shootings. It just doesn't happen very much at all. And the thing is, do you spend your money if you have a limited amount of money? Governments, which the police are government, right? Mm-hmm. So they're getting trained and they have X amount of dollars. If they're dealing with like traffic accidents and they're dealing with writing tickets or DWI, DUI, or they're dealing with domestic disturbances, where if they're dealing with that at a very high rate, and then they're dealing with hands-on use of force at a very low rate, they're going to deal with their training that way as well. So they're going to allocate money based on that. So I agree with you 100%. Police need more training, but that means it costs the government more money. And so do you know who pays for that? Me and you, the three of us, because our tax dollars have to go up in order to give them more training, because we've got to pay them to get trained. They're in the academy longer. And then every year they have to do more in-service training or go through more courses. Thankfully, that is starting to occur, and you're starting to see a lot more, especially jiu-jitsu now amongst law enforcement. It's becoming very common, which is awesome for all of us. Mm-hmm. It's awesome for the community. It's awesome for the police officers. Mm-hmm. And I think it's, as you guys know, if jiu-jitsu is applied properly, actually you have the least amount of damage, right? Yeah. So it's awesome. They're getting away from what they call neck restraints, which you would call like, rear naked choke or something like that. So, neck restraint or arm triangle, which would be a lateral vascular neck restraint. They rename them, but ultimately those things drop your blood pressure, right? They drop your heart rate. You're calm. Then, the person's under control. You can put them in cuffs and then you can move on. The problem is that many municipalities or cities or agencies see that as a liability, because if it's applied wrong, they can kill somebody.
Right.
And even though that's happening parts per million, it's not acceptable for the community. And therefore you have places like New York that start to remove that. Like, you can't do jiu-jitsu, you can't do wrestling. You can, like, sir, I know you just killed that person, but here are some cuffs. So you put them on and drive yourself to the station. Like, that's just not reality. So I agree, jiu-jitsu needs to be more common amongst police, but it is. And I would say in the last year, I would guess that it's up probably 50%, at least in the last 3 years. I'm seeing a lot more police, a lot more programs to support police for jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. Even though police are not popular right now, thanks in large part just to the media and how they're taking the 1% and exacerbating and saying, oh, look at this, look at this, look at this. Like, what about all the other 99 cases that they resolved without any type of violence? And by the way, you know, that person had a knife and that person was in the process of stabbing 2 people of color. And yes, they shot that person because they were stabbing someone, which is lethal force against 2 other people. So, and in your town, like with, you know, Breonna Taylor. So you have all kinds of stuff going on all over, a lot of politics, a lot of money issues. You can only train police on so much. And so at the end of the day, it's really about money and time. But I agree 100%, more jiu-jitsu for police. And if I can do something about it, I'm going to do it. I still train law enforcement agencies, state and federal, and I'm going to continue to do it, you know, as long as I live. So
yeah, you know, I mean,
we got to do our part, man.
Absolutely. I mean, fear and division sells, and there's money to be made in division rather than uniting people together. Because, like you said, I mean, like, the guys come into the gym, and I have tons of police officers, and you know, they'll tell me about these stories of where they'll go into community, and, you know, for instance, one of the guys just the other day could have had to stop. This thing happened, and I'm not going to get into the specific details, but he could have basically wrote this dude up, and it would have been like instant felony. This 21-year-old done. I mean, it's like he's in the system, and he's looking at the dude, and he's like, I'm not doing that, whatever. And then meanwhile, people start surrounding him. They're yelling like slurs at him, and he's trying to like help this guy out by not like just throwing everything at him, you know, because he came from a, you know, rough upbringing when he was younger, and he's like, I can see the dude. He's not a bad guy. Like, I'm trying to give the guy a bone, you know. And you don't see any of those stories ever. You know, you're never going to see them because it doesn't sell. It doesn't get you afraid or whatever.
You're absolutely right. That if people only understood, first of all, police officers are representative of the general population. You have black ones and white ones and Hispanic ones and male ones and female ones and big ones and small ones. They're people, right? They're human. So they're not going to be without issue. You're going to have issues like people have. But by and large, they're running to problems to try to help solve them. As a broad stroke, they do great work. Yes, there are some shitbags. You know that, and I know that, but that's in every profession. The thing is, we can't say that the 1% is the 99% and then ignore the 99%. And that's what we're doing exactly for the reasons you mentioned. It's what sells. It's what the media wants. And we create this division. It's not real. People are buying into smoke.
What do you think about this? When me and one of the other police officers were talking about this the other day at the gym, and we were talking about the fact that, you know, as far as like with use of force and things like that, you know, nowadays with our society being as soft as it is, where, like, you know, for instance, I mean, I remember growing up, like, kids had scraps. We had little fights every now and then. It was completely normal. You might have a couple days suspension, but you know what? It was like, that's what happens sometimes. People fight. And now it's like there's this instant zero tolerance. It's awful. Everything's bad about fighting. And, you know, you see kids today that never have been in a fight ever. You know, and then you think about, like, imagine, like, and so this is what the police officer I was talking to, he's like, dude, he goes, there's you know, probably 70% of the guys on the force had probably never been in a fight before they get in there because they grow up in these situations. So you grow up, you've never been in a fight, and the first time that you get your hands in, you know, with someone is in that situation. And if you don't train or wrestle or kickbox or box or something, you know, like, it's a crazy stressful environment, and it would be really hard to deal with it, like, on the spot, you know.
You're onto something, and I let me just let you in on a little bit of information. So
sure.
So when you hire a police officer, they go through a process, and so the first thing is they're going to go through an interview process, and in that interview process, a chief or, somebody in the command staff is going to look for somebody that's going to bring the least amount of problems to that agency. And if they're a badass go-getter, they're probably going to end up getting in shit. They're going to solve a lot of problems. They're going to go get bad guys, but they're going to ruffle feathers, right? So you don't really want that guy. You want a guy that can talk his way out of most things, that's friendly, that gets along with people, that's looking to solve it, and is a little bit worried about getting into an altercation. And that guy's not going to cost them that much. Now, here's where we face the problem. The guy that you're talking about, right, has never been punched in the face. He's never been in a street fight because, either he's a goody two shoes or he just was too worried about getting in trouble, whatever it may be. And so now, as soon as he's got a use of force encounter where that person's super aggro, he's worried about losing his life, or he just got punched in the face and his eyes are watering and his nose is broken, he's bleeding. And so what's he going to do? Instead of either duke it out with that guy or use jiu-jitsu, that guy's going to go straight to lethal force. Right. And that's what we're seeing happen now because they're hiring guys like that. Think about this. Most of the guys that have been in fights, they're not going to pass all the tests that are required to get into law enforcement. So if you want to be a law enforcement officer, you're going to pass that first interview. Then you're going to submit an application. They do a full background check on you. You can't have any drugs in your system because they're going to drug test you. You can't have any felonies or any type of domestic violence. You're going to have certain grades or like an associate's degree. Then you're going to have to go through a 6-month program at some police academy. Then you're going to be in a probationary status and you're going to be treated like shit when you first get to whatever agency it is for 6 months. Most of those people don't want that in the first place. So very few people will tolerate that, which is also why you see an issue for the most part with trying to get more black police officers because they're not respected within their own community. So they're not motivated to go through all of that rigmarole to go back in and then be disrespected. So it's problematic and you're onto something with, hey, if you're at least used to getting punched or kicked or choked or thrown, like these limited engagements we have in jiu-jitsu sparring, if it's a 6-minute roll and the guy's all over you and he's smashing you and it's knee and belly and then it's collar choke and then he's stepping over and he misses the armbar. Now he's in a triangle. You're used to enduring these hardships. It's a mental conditioning, or you're used to getting elbowed or kneed or punched or kicked or whatever it is in Muay Thai. You're not getting amped up as high as the guy that's never had that happen. And therefore you're able to make a more rational decision and you have more options available to you. Right. And I think that's what you're getting at. But the problem with that is, one, who they're hiring, and two, the level of training that they're getting based on how much money they're getting for training.
That's interesting. Yeah, you said that about like black officers. One of my students who was in law enforcement, like over the past year, it's weird. He was talking about the fact he's never walked into a place and gotten the slurs thrown at him ever until this year, because of that. Like he said, in his whole life, he's never had slurs said to him or whatever. But then, now he becomes an Uncle Tom or this or that or whatever. And I'm like, it sort of, it's hard. I feel like it sucks for him because I'm like, dude, like that's
absolutely, because he's who needs to police that community, and they can't get enough officers. They can't make a racial issue if it's a black on black issue. So he's the guy they need. He's the best guy. And all the law enforcement agencies that I'm aware of and that I've worked with are all looking for black officers, male and female. They want them. They can't find them because, again, you're not received well by that community as a general broad stroke. It's not true completely, but it's very different. For example, I'm in St. Louis and it's one way, but like I was in LaGrange, and when I'm in LaGrange, I'm out with officers from like Oldham County, and the guys in Oldham County, we're gonna go sit down, we're gonna have some food, and people coming up and paying for their meal saying, thank you, I appreciate what you do, I support you. So it's really community based. And let me say what's up to my boy TJ. All right. So, you got some good guys out there, and there's people working hard, and there's people trying to do what's right. But you can't believe everything you're told, man. People are just getting manipulated. Cops are just an extension of society, man. They're just humans doing a job, and they're representative of their community. They're not out there chasing people down to kill them. And I think, if you look at the 99%, you'll find that that's the truth. One place people can go to for that, just so they know if they're interested in this subject, there are things called uniform crime reports, right? So your local agency will feed your state agency, and the state agency will send them to FBI at Quantico, and it will tell you for crimes, and you can pick out specific crimes, but let's say violent crimes, right? You could say homicides specifically. It will tell you the victim and the suspect's age, race, and sex. And that's in order to basically stop profiling from occurring. So they mandated this. And so if you start to look at UCRs, Uniform Crime Reports, you can get a lot of data to give you an idea or extrapolate what's occurring in your society and really kind of see that what the media is telling you is not true. It's simply not true. It's not a matter of fact or opinion. It's just it's not true.
But no, the like you said, there's bad dudes out there, and the bad ones that are out there, take care of them. Get them.
Who do you think wants to get rid of them? Who do you think wants to get rid of them the most?
The police. They're out there. The good ones.
The police.
Right. The good ones.
Because look at your gym. Like I'm going to make the assumption you're just a good dude, and I'm going to make the assumption that you're teaching your guys to be good people, and that if you find out you have a shitbag who does bad things to kids or women or whatever, that you're going to get rid of him. You're not going to train him up to be a predator. Right. Absolutely. And I would do the same thing. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to make that assumption about you, but still somewhere lurking in your gym, there's going to be a turd. It's just it's going to be there. As soon as you find out, what are you going to do? You're going to get rid of them the same way that police would. So, that's happening. To say that all police are bad is like saying any person of color is bad. That's crazy. It's just not true.
We're categorizing anyone by anything, whether it be your skin color, your job, career, anything. You can't lump anybody together.
You cannot make that broad stroke when it comes to people, man. There's good people, there's bad people, but by and large, man, you live your life and you think about how many of those incidents you've had occur, not how many you've seen on the news, because that's every day, all day. But in reality, that's not the truth, man.
Right. Well, there's even bad Jiu-Jitsu black belts. I've seen people say
there's tons of those, dude.
Martial arts makes you such a good person. It's like, no, it doesn't. If you want to be a good person, you can work to be a better person. But there's so many scuzzy, bad black belt guys out there misusing their trust and doing bad stuff.
Yes, there are. You see that unfortunately too often. And I don't see that in the news. I just know through different communities and, between the different places that I've lived, the number of guys that in particular have been predators to younger girls and stuff. It's sad. And we've seen that repeatedly and across martial arts, not specific to jiu-jitsu, positions of power.
Yeah. That's kind of, it just, if you have power, you're just more of it extrapolates who you are to, you have more, I guess you can do more damage or do more harm.
Yeah. To your point, people ask me all the time, what's it like to work with this celebrity or that celebrity or this one? I said, well, the celebrities are people. So if they were a good person before they made all this money and had this fame, then that's just exacerbated. And so now you see the person using that money to do good things and taking care of people and spending time with charity and really giving back to the community. Or if they were a shitbag when they became famous and they made all this money, now they're doing bad stuff or not taking care of people or using it to cause harm, to manipulate certain things or whatever it may be, but they're people. So I agree with your sentiment.
Yeah. Well, Todd, I know you got to run, man. I know you got to be done pretty shortly. So if you can just tell us where people can find you, get a little more information on what you do. Maybe even, I know you do some courses for civilians as well.
Yeah. So my business is tourprotection.com. So if you wanted to see, we don't tell who our executives are, who our dignitaries are, but if you wanted to see Tool's a client or System of a Down's a client or whoever our bands or our artists are, that if they publicly tell people that we protect them, we put it out there. So you can see that on our site and you can learn a little bit more about the book, which is Protection for and from Humanity. And then you can Google me or put in toddafox.com. And if you want to see some of the stuff, we mentioned training in different countries and places like that all over the world. You'll see Jiu-Jitsu or Muay Thai photos and, standing on mountains at the top of, Kilimanjaro or wherever you pick it. So that stuff's there. And then I stayed off social media because of my job until last year. So literally at the start of COVID, I created an account. So I've got 3 followers. Maybe I've got 4 now.
Are you on Instagram or?
Yeah. So on Instagram, it's at Tour Training, TOURTRAINING. Gotcha. So you got that, but there's some pictures and some videos and stuff. And actually, as a point of reference, there is a video on Instagram. I don't know how far down it is within the last month that you can see some of our training in the back seats of cars with 2 guns and on the ground against a tire, stuck under a car, using the car to hurt the guy that's fighting you and then to protect your head at the same time. You can see some of those videos on that Instagram account. They're blurred out. They're going to be difficult to see the faces because they're law enforcement and or military, and so we don't want to put that out there. But there are a couple different things you guys can see. You should check it out if you're interested in that kind of stuff. And then the book you can find either through the website, tourprotection.com, or you can get on Amazon and Apple and Barnes and Noble and any of the other places. I would prefer you get it through me so that you give me that 50% of the money that they take, but it doesn't. So I
appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you, gents, for the chat. I appreciate you guys both.
All right, guys. So I hope you enjoyed that one with Todd. You know, a clarification, because we were talking about it on the podcast with my student who was he's a black officer. The reason why it bothered me so much is because I felt like he's a good dude and he's trying to do the right thing, and he's done the right thing. Like he's a good cop, good guy, right? And he's doing the right thing, and so it bothered me when you know, people are being negative towards him for something he didn't do.
Right.
You know what I mean?
What job he does.
Yeah.
Well, he's kind of like you're guilty by association, so to speak,
right.
which doesn't make sense. You don't want to stereotype anybody.
Well, that we're not supposed to. We're supposed to take our time to learn who people are, but and that's always been the case, right? We're supposed to learn who the individual is. I mean, sometimes there are, you know, yes, people, sometimes you are the company you keep, but it's always best to learn that's one of the things I learned from Jiu-Jitsu, because there's so many dudes that have come into the gym, men and women. I say people, guys, dudes, but so many people that have come into the gym who have changed my mind as to what I thought they were going to be. Right? Like you think you look at someone, you talk to them a little bit, you're like, I think I know this person. And then you get to know them, you're like, I don't know this person at all. Right? Like the guy that helps me do videos, and he's kind of my assistant, Spartan. The dude, like, rough past, came in. The dude is a bookworm like no other. I mean, the dude's, he'll talk to you about all kinds of random science stuff that he's reading and everything else. I mean, the dude's just dives into him. You know, there's guys like one of the guys like Frank. Frank's funny as can be. Like Frank like ridiculous. Frank, like he came into the gym wearing like this tap out get out, you know, and I'm like, oh my god, this douchebag, you know. And then he's a cool dude, and he's really talented at a lot of random stuff. You know, he can fix about anything, and he does a very good job at it. He can play multiple instruments.
Really?
Yeah. He can play the violin. He can play the piano.
What?
Yeah. And then he's good. He's really good at jiu-jitsu, you know, especially for his time in. Like it's like you don't make any sense, you know. Like he can draw real well.
Really?
Yeah.
Very artistic.
Yeah, he's got all these things going on. I'm like, man, you would have never expected that coming from that dude when you first met him. So again, there's so many people who have come in the gym, and I could go on for hours doing that, where they've changed my mind. So it's like I try to be good about it. I'm not, again, we're human, so we make mistakes, but I try to like give people the benefit of the doubt. Like, show me who you are. You know, I'll give you that. Like, just show me who you are, because I don't know. Because a lot of times when I go into a encounter or relationship with someone with preconceived notion as to who I think they are, it's almost always wrong. And so I try to be like, have a beginner's mind towards that. Like, just be kind of a blank slate. Who are you? You show me who you are, and I'll just leave it at that. You know, like I'll treat you sort of indifferently, and you kind of sway me one way or the other based upon your actions.
You'll find that their true self, because if they keep showing up, they keep going in stressful situations, and then they kind of open up. People open up. It's funny how I think we have some really great conversations after a tough training session. Yeah. Everybody's really relaxed, and everybody's guards kind of, you know, you're not like, you're just relaxed. The tough training's over.
Your brain is turned off.
Yeah.
You know, because you're so exhausted.
And we're just like, we just have some really great, deep, open-minded conversations, and nobody's judging anyone. We're just like, oh, that's cool. Or that's, you know, that happened. All right. You know, we just kind of, you just get to know people. And I think when somebody struggles, when we go through struggle together, like we talked about, you know, having these, it's a struggle. It's constant duress. You're getting choked or trying to not be choked and all this stuff. And it's just afterwards, you're so relaxed and you kind of get to know each other. And I think people start to open up.
And that's another thing too, is like you get to open up and talk to people and hear like different sides of different situations. Like, you know, like throughout this past year, like it was a crazy year, and hearing from different people from different walks of life, different political beliefs, different colors of skin. How do you feel about this? And not having any sort of like, I'm right or wrong about it, but being like, just how do you feel about this? Because I don't know like what it's like to be you. What do you feel about this? And I think it's so cool. Like, because again, like there's very few places where you can just openly talk to people
Yeah.
from all these different walks of life without like there being some sort of agenda or some sort of fight about who's right and who's wrong. It's like, no, there's no right or wrong. It's like, you're my bro and I love you as a friend and a brother, but I just want to know how you feel.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to know where you're coming from. And a lot of times, like, you know, people give you perspectives on things that kind of change your mind. You're like, oh, well, you know, I never saw it that way. You know, and even if and then if you disagree, you know what? I disagree with you, but I still love you. And I wish you all the best.
Sure.
You know? And so I think that's such a cool thing because, like you said, like, you can just let your guard down. Like, you're not trying to dunk on your buddy. You're just like, I just want to know where you're coming from, you know? But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. I had a lot of fun talking to Todd. And again, I feel like we get some of these guests and we're like, I could talk to this guy for a long time.
Yeah, he had to run. We kind of had a little bit of time, limited time, so it would have been.
We still had him for an hour, almost an
hour and a half. We had an hour and a half. So for us, that's a decent podcast. But I'm sure we could. He's got some great stories that he didn't share. So
yeah, but guys, as always, if you enjoyed the podcast, you could support us if you want to. You know how you can support us? You can start off by giving us a positive review somewhere. Tell us about what you think.
5 stars.
5 stars
would be nice.
And if you don't think we're worth 5 stars, send us an email and tell us why. Tell us why we're not worth 5 stars, or whatever the rating system is, which I think are all arbitrary. I don't think there should be a 5-star system because I think it's a bad system. You know, the Jess and I we just bought a new washer dryer and for the house, and Jess is like, she's freaking out because they were kind of expensive, you know, which is like, we bought like a good one.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, we went to this place, bought like, she wanted one of those Speed Queens. You know, it's like, it's just one of these brands and it's like supposed to be really good, whatever.
Okay.
So she's got Speed Queen. Okay, get the Speed Queen, you know, and so we got it and she's reading the reviews on it and like they had some negative ones.
Oh, yeah.
They're all minor things. But one of them was like some old woman with like, I forgot what it was about the comment, but she was an older woman. It was like, I had my Speed Queen for 40 years, you know, whatever. And like, that's my old woman voice. And so it somehow she was like, it was the most amazing thing ever, whatever. And she clicked 1 star. So I think she just messed up, you know.
She got the whole star thing confused.
Yeah. I think they should just have like, and honestly, it's like, unless you're going to give someone criteria, it's like, it's arbitrary. It's like, because it's like, typically you see like most of them are either like 5, maybe sometimes a 4, or like 1. It's like, you know, it's like,
what's a 4? What would be like, I'm going to give this a 4. You know, I like it. It's a free podcast and they entertain me, but just not enough, you know, just not enough for it to be.
You know, I don't like Chewy because he's stupid. I don't know. You know, I don't know how you see this thing. That's the whole thing. It's like, to me, it's like
somebody send us criteria for 1 star through 5 and we will post it.
There's a star system and there's not a pre. So like, what does it mean to have a 5-star podcast? Like,
people like you more. People listen to you more. You probably trend higher on whatever.
Right. But it's like based upon what? Like good quality, good conversations, or just people like you?
I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit.
I mean, it is those things, but there's no criteria. It's not based upon some it's basically like this 5-star criteria thing. It's basically like the UFC judges like early 2000s. Basically, it's a toss up. Like you could watch a guy get the crap beat out of him and somehow he wins the fight, right? Because it's like you got like some judge over in the corner that did like kung fu back in the 70s.
How insane is that, by the way? Why are like these people are like could possibly seriously injure themselves and you have no idea what the hell's going on,
bro,
and you could literally take half of their money away by being a dumbass and not knowing. I'm not gonna have you go fix my car if you don't know how to fix a car, Chewy. I'm not gonna learn jiu-jitsu from you if you're over there doing ping pong.
I mean, that's just
not gonna happen.
Well, that's what they had to do.
Ugh.
Because back in the day, they were trying to just get legal, so they had to go with a boxing commission, you know? And so they had the boxing commissioners, and they would just get assigned
But they
judges.
didn't know anything.
They didn't know anything, bro. And
it's like you got 30-27 for a guy that was like, you know, on the ground getting the shit beat out of him, but he did maybe punch the guy twice, standing up.
Like, what's all this wrestling stuff?
I don't know, man.
Bro, I mean, that was like back in the day, like a takedown. Just a takedown itself with a big slam, it may have not accumulated any damage, but like that would get scored really high.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the back in the day with the difference between Pride and UFC. Early on was like Pride would like if someone was in the ground and they were going for submissions, you could win a pride fight that way.
Yeah.
Because you were trying to fight.
You're more aggressive.
You're more aggressive, and they understood what they were watching. In the United States, I mean, if you got a takedown and you sit there and just like gave someone a Zerbert, you know, like
what's a Zerbert?
You know where you blow on someone's belly, like, or you take your stomach and you just blow like.
Is that a raspberry or
no? That's not like Zerbert.
I don't know what
You don't know.
I've never heard the Zerbert.
No, you never heard Zerbert? Let me see if it's a.
It's not what's a raspberry?
I don't know. It sounds dirty.
No, it's like a raspberry. Red belly. You gave me a red belly.
I gave you red belly.
It's not red belly.
Let's see, Zerbert.
It's some kind of crazy South End stuff I don't know about.
Yeah, Zerbert. So it's not. It's an Urban Dictionary.
Urban Dictionary. If that makes sense.
I mean, this is the authority.
This is taking a turn for the
To
worse.
press your lips on someone's stomach or body and blow, often done to babies to make them laugh. What did you call it? Raspberry?
I don't know. Is it a raspberry?
Let's see, raspberry.
Like giving somebody a raspberry? Is that what, or is that not it? I don't know. I don't know these names.
Let's see.
What is that?
Blowing a
What's blowing a raspberry?
Let's see. Blowing a raspberry, strawberry, or making a Bronx cheer. Bronx cheer? What the hell is a Bronx cheer? Is to make a noise signifying derision, real or feigned. It is made by placing the tongue between the lips and blowing to produce a sound similar to flatulence. So
you're just going...
Yeah, no, that's
okay. I didn't. Sorry, I confused.
God, that was really like isn't that so crazy? How
I didn't know where this was going.
Isn't that difficult? How crazy it is to explain? Like it's such a simple motion, and you have to give it this paragraph to explain it.
God,
isn't that neat? That's crazy that you see like language is so faulty because it's so hard to explain stuff.
Well, Zerbert. I'm glad.
Zerbert. Now you learn something new, bro. I'm
glad
you to the world.
This whole podcast with Todd, who is.
And then you got cork in the cup.
Don't you tell him about this. This is going to be on the spoof reel. Anyway.
But guys, I hope you enjoyed the podcast. And again, if you want to support the podcast, then you obviously you can take part in the arbitrary system of 5 stars. We'd appreciate it. But you can also check out some of our sponsors. One is at Charlotte's Web, charlottesweb.com. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu. Save 15% on the order. Again, I encourage you to take a challenge of 30 days. Just try one of their supplements, see how it goes, and then see if you have the contrast that I had when I used it versus when I didn't, and why I've been using it for 3 years ever since. Matt at Epic Roll, everything from really cool, like I almost said Jiu-Jitsu lifestyle type gear, shirts, fanny packs, joggers, everything. And then he also has gis as well. And then the Patreon, if you guys want to support the podcast directly, you can go to our Patreon at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast, which has content from every guest we've had, along with all kinds of other random stuff that we put in the back end. Everything from there's a workout program in there. There's a beginner's workout program in there if you need something for beginners, mainly if you're at the gym. There's stretching videos that we've done. There's rolling videos that we've done. There's all kinds of stuff. So again, if you want to check that out, you can go over there and do that. And lastly, if you want to get one of the Jiu-Jitsu gis made by Origin, this is the first time I've ever used Origin to make gis. I've been wearing my Origin gi that I had made from them originally for 3 years. Beat the crap out of it. Darn thing is it's a tank. It's in great shape. And so I got a gi made from them to share with you guys. If you want to check it out, we have the black with a green lapel, super, super tough. We also have a classic white one. So if you're in a traditional school, can't wear colors, or if you just want a basic white one that you can wear in competitions or whatever, you can check that one out as well. And so again, you can go to my website or wherever you're watching this at. There's something somewhere. If you search Jiu-Jitsu, you'll find it attached to it. And the pre-sale goes from May 7th to May 21st, 2021. After that, no mas.
And if you want to learn about Origin, like what their story is, we had Pete on the podcast. I think it was episode 147. Mm-hmm. And that dude is inspirational. Like, I mean, the stuff like he went through to learn the trade, to learn how to make these weaves, and now he's making boots and all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean, and it's all made in the U.S. So you're supporting U.S. U.S. made stuff, which is kind of cool. He's a pretty inspirational dude. Very, very interesting, and a high level black belt too. Yeah, and if you want to even if you're not interested in the gi, if you're like a business owner or want to be a business owner, it's worth a listen. Because when I'm listening to him and talking to him, I'm getting pumped up because again, it's stuff that any of us that run businesses or get involved in business we all are going to experience in some fashion. So it's a good podcast to listen to. All right, guys. Well, thank you all for tuning in, and
talk to you next week.
Yeah. Bye-bye.